Everybody wants to know what's going on in today's real estate market. There's so much information out there saying the market is amazing, there's low inventory, and then there's other information saying that the market is doomed and prices are crashing. So stay tuned to check out the newest data from April of 2023. Let's start by looking at the average sale price data as of April 1st, 2023 here in Palm Beach County. If we compare March of 2022 to March of 2023, you can see that we've experienced a 1% average sale price increase over this period of time. So according to this data, homes are worth 1% more than they were last year. So year over year, price growth is basically flat. This is where looking at the trend line of the average sale price and other data points can be very, very helpful. Because if we compare June of 2022 to March of 2023, you see that prices have declined by 13% since then. That's a pretty steep decline in the average sale price data, and frankly, a little concerning from my perspective. And I don't think most people are aware of this data, because if you look at the average listing price right now, today, and compare it to June and May of 2022, you'll see that today people are listing their properties on average for more than they were back then, which doesn't really make much sense if we see that prices are coming down. This next graph clearly shows the difference between the average active listing price and the average sold price in today's market and compares it to last year's market. And it clearly shows that over time here, properties are now selling for less than what they're asking for on average. This is called the sale to original list price ratio graph. And as you can see, in April of 2022, properties were selling at or above asking on average. And now in today's market, we're seeing properties sell for about 7 to 8% less than the original list price. Properties selling at 7 to 8% below the original list price has been the average for about the past 5 months. And it also was typical pre-COVID. So this is where the market typically sat for the 5 years before COVID hit. So I suspect that we'll probably live in this world a little longer. And this is just another indication that there is downward pressure here on pricing in our current market. It's important to note that whenever we talk about sold data, we're talking about a lagging indicator. And you might ask, what do I mean by a lagging indicator? Well, basically what I mean is when a property is sold today, the contract is typically drafted a month or two earlier. So whenever we're looking at today's sold data, we're actually referencing market conditions from a month or two ago. Next, a good way to understand if our market is slowing or accelerating is to take a look at the days on market trend. And this is basically how long a property sits on the market before it goes under contract for sale. When we look at the average days on market data here in Palm Beach County and compare March of 2022 to March of 2023, we've seen an 84% increase in the days on market. So basically homes are sitting significantly longer today than they were at the same time last year. So today here in Palm Beach County, the average property will sit for 57 days active on the MLS before it goes under contract. As you can see here on the trend line, the average days on market have continued to creep up recently, and I suspect that will continue here into the summer months. Typically in South Florida, the selling season is between February and May, so that's where demand is strongest. So as we roll into the summer months, I suspect days on market will continue to increase here. And it's also interesting to note that before COVID, and for the past 5 years before COVID, the average days on market sat somewhere in the 80s. So I suspect we'll continue to trend up until we hit that 80 mark and get back to normal pre-COVID conditions. Now let's take a look at the number of listings graph. This data typically helps me understand the current and anticipated inventory here in the Palm Beach County market. This data also points to a changing real estate market. In March of 2023, our real estate market closed 2,749 homes, and that's 20% less than the same time last year. And furthermore, as of April 1st, 2023, we are seeing 2 times the amount of inventory as compared to the same time last year. Now that data point could be a little alarming, but if you dig a little deeper, and you compare today's inventory to pre-COVID inventory numbers, you'll find that today's inventory is about 41% less than December of 2019 as an example. So despite doubling our inventory in the past year, we are still in a very, very low inventory world. So there is significantly less active listings today than compared to December of 2019 and historically before COVID. Now let's take a look at a leading indicator here on the chart. Let's look at under contract data. If we compare March of 2023 to March of 2022, we'll see that 6% less properties went under contract this year as compared to last year. I think this generally signals that we have good, healthy buyer demand in our market. While it is a 6% drop from last year, it's not that bad from my perspective. And previous months had lower pending sale numbers. So this is a tick up from previous months. So that's also a positive signal. Now, as we approach summer months, I suspect that we may see pending sales drop off a little further as demand pulls back because we are in peak demand season right now. And as you know, if you've been watching some of my other market update videos, this pending and under contract data is a leading indicator and will become our sold data here in the next coming months. Now let's get into absorption rate. The absorption rate shows how long the current inventory of properties would last at the current rate of sales. So basically, if no new properties were added to the market and properties continued to sell at the current pace, then the absorption rate indicates how many months it would take to sell all the properties on the market. The absorption rate trend here in Palm Beach County indicates that the market has definitely changed over the past year. Right now, we are looking at a 3.7 months absorption rate, and that's more than double what it was over a year ago. This is something interesting to think about. If we look at the 5 years before COVID changed the real estate market, we see that the absorption rate sat somewhere in the fives. So if we're thinking that maybe the market might return back to its pre-COVID norms, we could probably expect that the absorption rate will go from 3.7 up to the 5 range somewhere in the next year or two. Now let's consider how mortgage rates are impacting our real estate market. As we can see from the trend line here, a 30-year mortgage is currently in the low sixes. And that's basically double what it was last year. So this is absolutely putting downward pressure on our real estate market prices. Now, interest rates have been sitting in that low 6% range for the past couple months. And before that, I think we saw the peak height of interest rates at 7. Now, I do think it's also interesting to look at the spread between the 10-year treasury and the 30-year mortgage. And that historically runs around 1.79%. And recently it's been around 2.8%. So I think it's possible that we see further interest rate compression or interest rate reductions here in the future just by simply letting the market return to its norms. Finally, one last note on interest rates. I don't think many people really understand the full impact of purchasing power for the buyer on an interest rate change from 3.5% to 6%. So let me demonstrate this for you on a table here. Now let's take a look at this table and let's do this analysis. So if you took the average sale price of $710,000 here in Palm Beach County and you applied an 80% LTV loan to it at 3.5%, your payment would be $2,551 per month. Now, if you kept everything the same and just applied today's interest rate to the same purchase, you'd pay $3,405 per month. That's a big difference, right? Now, what if you wanted to make the same payment you were paying for $710,000 a year ago today? Well, you'd have to drop that purchase price all the way down to $531,700. That's a 25% reduction in sales price or a 25% reduction in purchasing power for the buyer. That is a big, big change. And if that isn't downward pressure on pricing, I don't know what is. And now let's get into insurance and the insurance market here in South Florida. We'll briefly talk about this. This is also another hurdle for buyers who are coming into the market. It's also putting downward pressure on pricing. If the mortgage rates weren't enough, we are having increases in insurance premiums every day down here in South Florida. I think it'll work itself out, but in the short term, prices are going up. So this is absolutely putting downward pressure on pricing. So let me quote the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. The trend of paying up to protect your home is expected to continue in 2023. According to the Insurance Information Institute, premiums in Florida are expected to increase an average of about 40% this year, even though lawmakers in Tallahassee approved sweeping reforms in a special legislative session last month. We've discussed the inventory from a resale perspective. Now let's briefly touch on the inventory from a new construction perspective here in South Florida. The general theme down here in South Florida, and specifically Palm Beach County, is that you can't really just build infinitely outward. You have restrictions. You have the ocean on one side and the Everglades on the other. So land is limited here, and so new construction is limited. And last year, Palm Beach County delivered somewhere about 6,000 residential dwelling permits. And that's great, but the population growth here has been about 17,000 people per year. So we're not really keeping up with the amount of population growth here in Palm Beach County specifically. So we could probably expect going into the future that we will continue to see this low inventory environment because we're not adding enough new construction here in South Florida. Another note about new construction here in Palm Beach County. Well, new construction typically isn't that cheap here. Why is that? Because land is scarce and construction costs are as high as they've ever been. So in order for a builder to make a profit, they typically have to build something pretty nice. So a lot of my buyers who come to this market from out of the area, they're sometimes very surprised at how costly a new construction home is. So a lot of the buyers, or a majority of the people who are buying homes in South Florida, are typically buying resale because they're just priced out of the new construction product. Now, I mentioned that Palm Beach County is expected to grow by about 17,000 people in 2023, but also note this. More people moved to Florida last year than any other state in the country. And so now Florida is ranked as the #1 state for the fastest population growth. Now that is definitely upward pressure on pricing. And I think this is what's helping keep demand strong in our market. Now let's talk about the psychology of buyers and sellers in the market. And if you're watching this thinking about how you can maneuver through today's real estate market, I'll give you some tips and some recommendations on how I think you should do that. The first thing I want to talk about is if you look at the average sale price data and the average sold price data, it is very obvious that buyers and sellers are not on the same page about what a property is worth. I think that's because sellers are looking at June of 2022 data, hoping they can still get that number, and buyers are very acutely aware of insurance costs and cost to own a home after the mortgage rate has gone up so much. I think this is going to work itself out over time as the market kind of stabilizes and normalizes. We'll get back to a place where people are on the same page for the most part about what value is. But in the meantime, how do you think about operating in this market if you need to buy or sell? As a listing agent representing sellers, my typical communication is let's put our buyer hat on together and let's be honest and realistic about what we think this property is worth. Let's look at comps that are recent and not look at comps from early 2022. And let's really try to think about what we think a buyer would think our property is worth. Let's choose that number and let's go out with that. And if we do that, we typically drive a ton of traffic to the listing. And in this current market, we are experiencing multiple offers, bidding wars when we do this right. So you typically sell for more than what your property is worth when you do this. You get multiple offers, you sell fast, and you get the terms that are more advantageous to you when you do this. So that's my recommendation to sellers. Do it this way because your competition is in the clouds right now. They're listing property at way higher than what the current market is dictating it's worth. And so you will win if you do this. Now, as a buyer's agent, this is how I think about things. A lot of properties are listed for more than what the market is dictating they're worth. Now, eventually, a lot of these sellers are going to come to reality and sell the property for what it's worth. So if we walk through a property and we say, oh, we like it, but it's definitely overpriced, let's make an offer. Let's get in there because a lot of other buyers are not making the offer. So when the seller does come to reality and decide they want to work with someone, our offer's already in there sitting on their table and we will be the first call for them. So we just kind of be patient, put offers in where we think is appropriate, and just wait it out. In conclusion, the data that we reviewed suggests that the market has absolutely changed in the past year, and it also suggests that we are in a transition as we speak. The gains that we saw in early 2022 have mostly been given back now, as we've seen a 13% decline in the average sale price since June of 2022. This has led to buyers and sellers being a little bit disconnected on what they believe a property is worth. If I had to make a bet, I would say that the market is trending back towards its pre-COVID norms. So that would suggest that the days on market, the absorption rate, and the inventory will all continue to climb here as we enter the summer. Thank you guys for watching our video. I hope you found a ton of value here. We definitely put a lot of effort, time into quantifying and analyzing this data. So if you found it interesting and valuable, please hit the subscribe button below, hit the like button. And if you have any questions about the real estate market here in Palm Beach County, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, send me a text, give me a call. We're always available to talk real estate. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.